Hello and welcome to Business Nigeria. I am Tolulope Ogunjobi. Well, President Muhammadu Buhari's led APC government has initiated various programs for the nation's economic development in the last 3 years. Some of the government's actions have pushed up national activities, just as others have caused some pains in some quarters. Well, in today's edition, we'll look at some of these issues, putting them into perspective. Stay with us. As Nigerians celebrate another Democracy Day in 2018, business leaders and financial experts have expressed divergent views on the present state of the Nigerian economy and efforts by the Buhari-led administration to stabilize business activities. We have details in this report.
The Nigerian economy has been bedeviled with a series of challenges even before President Muhammadu Buhari took over office in 2015 after a keenly contested election. The president opted for economic diversification, citing the unprecedented fall in the global oil prices. In the last 2 years, the emphasis has been on solid minerals and agriculture, both of which in 2016 grew by 7% and 4.1% respectively. For the solid mineral sector, figures made available from the presidency shows a contribution of 2 billion naira as against 700 million naira in 2015. In August 2015, President Buhari introduced the Treasury Single Account, a unified structure of bank accounts enabling consolidation and optimal utilization of government's cash and resources. 1 year after, President Buhari inaugurated the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, saddled majorly with the responsibility of introducing a single form for company registration to save time and reduce cost.
Clearly, I think a few good steps have been taken, and it's a journey. The journey is a long one, and what is important is the destination, not the journey itself or the means to getting there. Is the destination, the end game. And I think the economy has fared well. I'm moving from recession after 2 to 3 years, and like I said, a lot of missteps were made in the past, but right now, based on the economic recovery and growth plan, a few things have been done. What some of us in the private sector have always called for is to have what you call an M&E, monitoring and evaluation, because what doesn't get measured doesn't get done. What we have had before now is government coming up with policies that are based on electoral cycles. We need to stop this electoral cycle mentality, which is a 4-year period of a government comes in, after that government comes in, a new one comes in, and they change the policy somersaults. Look at rice, for example. Prior to now, we had around about 5.5, about 6 million rice farmers, 5.8 to 6 million rice farmers, just rice farmers. But now we have around about 12. So rice farmers have increased, and this is basically due to the fact that we've said to ourselves we need to backwardly integrate.
With this present federal government, they have been trying to make sure that the enabling environment to investors are being okay. And I want to say, when they discover that things are not doing well, they put payback into action. They put also the ERGP and so many other areas whereby to have all business investors to look back for incentives. Another area they are looking into, is it visa problem? You come with your genuine paper as investors. You come to our airport, you get visa on spot. All these are areas they have been doing, which I think we should commend them for, and let us work together to ensure that our economy peaks.
Another achievement is the whistleblower policy. It is a new anti-corruption policy instituted to reward whistleblowers with up to 5% for reporting fraud, both public and private sectors. The National Economic Recovery and Growth Plan was also launched during the period in review with a vision to restore economic growth and build a globally competitive economy.
Nigeria, we must look inwards now, and in order to produce and increase productivity, because that is really the key. That's where the strength is. And we definitely have to be an export-led economy. That's the only way we can make a difference. Look, Oil gives us 90% of our foreign exchange earnings. Oil prices go down, we have a problem, we go into recession. So we really must get other sectors to contribute. And when you look at our economy, it's over 56% GDP driven by services. But we're not getting foreign exchange from it. And that is the crux of the matter.
It's good news, we have been growing our external reserves, which is good for us. But what it also means is that managing the economy, and in fact the value of the currency, is now going beyond what we knew traditionally in economic theory. So it then means that more attention should be paid to investor confidence, because that is what now drives the exchange rate in the sense of movements of investable funds. So, and I believe that the MPC will begin to pay more attention to investor confidence and not just rely on how many months of our import bills our external reserves can pay. Because if we look at that today, Nigeria should be very, very comfortable. If we look also at what is happening to the nexus between imports and exports, and then the price of crude oil, which of course is the major driver of our foreign earnings, Nigeria should be very, very comfortable. But looking the other way at South America, what happened to Argentina in the last 3 months, it shows clearly that yes, we should not really be comfortable with a strong external reserve base. We should now be looking more at managing investor confidence.
Inflation rate also declined for the 15th consecutive month in April, according to figures released by the National Bureau of Statistics. The fall in inflation rate started in January 2017, and this trend has continued, and at the moment, the rate stands at 12.48% in April, dropping from 13.4% in March. In all of these positive figures, members of the business community believe that more can be achieved.
We have been clamoring for review of rates in terms of the disparity and divide of our purchases. We buy at $3.60 to $1, and then the banks buy the same proceeds from the IMTOs at $3.57 naira to $1. So these are some of the concerns we are talking about. And we have all seen there is a permanent stability in the market. Even the parallel market are doing below 362 as I'm talking. So there is the need for us to have a single exchange rate in the market, which will give further confidence to both investors and the international community. That's part of our concern. We are looking at just fairness. You know, what we are saying, the banks are buying at 357, IMTOs proceed. So it's good for the BDC to also buy at 357, so that we can all have a common ground, because we serve the same client.
So we're really trying to make sure that we're self-sufficient, but the self-sufficiency thing should not be a mantra or a slogan. Okay, there should be an attempt to do it properly. You have access to capital or access to finance, market access itself. You see, people always think about rice has become a political staple, but in being a political staple, we need to curb smuggling. About 2 million tons of rice gets smuggled in every year. So government says, okay, I think we consume round about, depending on which side of the divide you find yourself and who you want to believe, we consume round about 6 to 7 million tons of rice, of which we produce round about 3.5 or 4 million thereabout. But in that 3.5, 4 million tons that we talk about, that we produce, 2 million comes in as smuggled. So when it comes in as smuggled, you factor it in as local production. Meanwhile, it is smuggled rice. So we need to work on that.
Industry players say there is need to focus more on the implementation of policies that will improve the contributions of the non-oil sector to the growth of the Nigerian economy. They believe that if this is done, inflation will drop to single digits, GDP rate will be impressive, and the economy will witness inclusive growth.
Well, let's look at some of those issues critically. I have with me in the studio Head of Tax, PricewaterhouseCoopers, President of Mr. Taiwo Oyedele. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Oyedele.
It's my pleasure.
Well, happy Democracy Day.
I wish you the same.
Well, let me start with what's your take, an overview of economic activity. I know there are lots of activities between 2015 and now, but what's your assessment? Tell us, what have you really picked out?
I'll say overall we have made some progress, but it's not enough. And of course, if you look at it from different perspectives, you see some areas are looking better than it was before, like the external reserve. Some areas are not looking good at all, like unemployment rate. Inflation has been falling, but it's still not at single digit. So I think it's mixed at the moment, as you would expect. And I think the issue is really for government to see where we are as a country now as a matter of urgency to double up the efforts.
Double up the effort. Now let's look at the inflation, which you just talked about very, very importantly. Now talking about the 15-month drop, even in that report that we talked about, inflation coming down to 12.48%. That's as we speak. So what will be also responsible for this constant decline that we've had?
You know, the thing about it is, first, we need to understand what it means. If we say inflation has been falling consistently since January 2017, so you're at 12.5%. What that means is, generally, prices of goods and services are still going up, but the rate at which they're going up is lower than before. So really, it's nothing to be too excited about. It's good that we're bringing it down, but we need to get to single digits. It should be very low inflation. Otherwise, if you have high unemployment rates and you have high inflation, combination of it is mystery index. It means that life is difficult for people. So I think whatever we're doing now to bring down the inflation rate, we need to intensify it, which is why I have my views about what should we do with money supply, interest rates, and the rest of it. But we need to get a point where Nigeria start producing again. And we need to get to a point where we are productive than we've been in the past and most recently. That's how to really get back to a point where inflation will come down significantly. We shouldn't spend another 1.5 years just to reduce inflation by 3%.
Because that didn't even affect the decision of the MPC at the last meeting, because they still maintain the monetary policy rate at 14%, despite saying the inflation stands at 12.5% at the moment. Many were worried about that. I don't know what you make of that decision.
No, I think that we're at a point where we really need to place the question about inflation very correctly. I don't think it's a money supply problem. And I think that we're at a point now where if you reduce the interest rate, the MPR, then what you do is you enhance production and productivity. Growth for me is more important than this thing about inflation must be a single digit. At the end of the day, you know, we have countries like Ghana where they reduced their interest rate and they haven't faced any crisis with inflation. So I think it's similar to Nigeria, and we need to do that very quickly. Okay,
now let's look at the FX issue too, FX policy. I think there's been a little bit of stability in regards to FX lately, from about 500 at a point, and now we're doing 360. But there's still the disparity, multiplicity of rates. What's responsible for this stability, and can we really run a one-rate system across Nigeria?
I would like for us to run a single rate system. I don't think it's feasible anytime soon. But what is responsible is very simple. It was the exporters and investors window that was created that has brought in the stability. And how did it bring in the stability? We restored investors' confidence, because investors want market prices and forces to determine the price of Naira to dollar and the rest of the other currencies. Because of that, the CBN had to intervene less than before. So a lot of money has been, in fact, there's a time that the CBN was buying dollars so that Naira does not appreciate too much. But then you still have that gap, especially between the official rate of 305 and 360 thereabout, which is the real rate. And then in between, you have other rates. We need to get a point very quickly where we can reduce those rates to 1 or 2, and then ultimately, we need to harmonize that. What is more important is not whether Naira is strong or weak, it's whether the rate of exchange is stable. That's what investors need to be able to plan and be able to invest.
All right, let's take this break. We'll be back shortly and continue this very interesting discussion. Stay with us on Business Nigeria. Thank you for staying with us. I still have in the studio Head of Tax PricewaterhouseCoopers, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, giving insights into issues surrounding Nigerian economy at this time, today, Democracy Day. Well, another very important issue is the gross domestic product rate, at which the last positive we had 1.95%, looking at the figures from the National Bureau of Statistics. Now, what do you make of this this figure, this positive figure? What do you make of it? 1.95%.
Yeah, I like the fact that you said it's positive, but I think there's also a problem with averages. So if you break that down and say, what does it mean, 1.9%? First, that's smaller than the growth in population rate. So if you're growing by like 3%, and then your GDP is 1.92%, then it's negative growth technically. But even when you break down the 1.96%, you find out that the key sectors of the economy are struggling. Really, the significant growth we have seen has been in the oil sector. So which means the sector, the oil that got us into recession is what is taken out of recession. Now, which means you haven't done anything fundamentally different. If oil goes down again to $30, $40, we're going to be back in recession. So agric is struggling. The growth is slower now. Manufacturing was in recession until last quarter. Services, which is the biggest sector, is in recession. Now, I think we need to get a point where we say, what can we do to fundamentally get the non-oil sector to be more productive? And really, most of these sectors are the ones that are labor intensive, not just capital intensive, because what that means, when you get growth in manufacturing and services, you employ a lot of people and unemployment rate can come down. So it's good that we are in the positive territory, but it's very fragile.
Well, indeed, I must talk about our tax system and also the introduction of VAT. What's the update with regards to revised the tax reform that is on, and also VAT? What do you make of all of this action by government to improve taxation?
Yeah, so one of the very good things that this government has done is to introduce a new national tax policy. That was in 2017. And then a committee was set up to implement it, because really Nigerians never lack ideas. The problem is with execution and implementation. So some of the things that have been done, we have a few executive orders, bills, and all of that. But I think that the progress is still very slow. The voluntary asset and income declaration scheme was also as a consequence of that. Essentially to say, let's expand the tax base, but more importantly, let's get people to start paying, especially the middle class and the rich people. The success hasn't been as good as we'd like it to be. VAT was extended for a few months, about 3 months. It's going to end now by end of June. I think we need to now get to a point where government really needs to build capacity and be prepared to tackle people who have refused to pay the right amount of taxes. Government has to lead by example in terms of paying their taxes and telling the whole world about what they have paid. And most importantly, people in leadership must be people who are themselves tax compliant.
Bringing people into the tax net is also one thing. Also making people enjoy what government also gets from taxation is another. In Nigeria, how would you rate? Apart from Lagos, many are saying just Lagos as a state, we can say, oh yeah, we can see taxpayers' money at work. What do you make of this in government, talking about federal level?
Yeah, so I think it's a chicken and egg situation. The money that government currently collects federally, so put all the states together, they collected under 1 trillion naira last year from IGR. That's a tiny, it's not even up to the budget of New York, as just a state in the US. So the money government is currently collecting is too small. But even with that small money, we need more transparency, accountability, and social services, which is why the Lagos State example is a good one. Whatever little money you have, let's see how you're spending it. And that way, beyond your legal right to collect taxes, you then have the moral right to also enforce it. And then once people start paying taxes and you're using it for development, everybody benefits. At 6% tax to GDP ratio, it's impossible to develop. An IMF report says for any country to really develop, you need a minimum of 15%. So we're not even halfway there yet. So it's still a long journey.
Now, before we end this discussion, building small, micro, medium enterprises is something that's also very important. And this government has also tried. I think that's also part of the economic recovery and growth plan. But infrastructure remains this problem, and particularly power. And we're hearing 7,000 megawatts here. These schools cannot try, and they can't wheel out this power. The transmission companies. What do we really need to do to revamp? The power sector remains very important here. I want your views on this.
Yeah. So infrastructure is very important. SME that you touched on is also very significantly important. If you take it, we have about around 30 million small businesses all over the place. Imagine if every one of them can employ one person today. Our unemployment rate and underemployment will go down very significantly. But what do we need to do? We need to enable them. One of it is infrastructure. Infrastructure is not going to happen overnight, but government needs to be very sincere and deal with the policy issues. So power sector issue is not a question of whether there's money to invest. There are global companies that are willing to invest, but they wouldn't come. You are regulating price, you have government in between, the value chain, and things don't work. Generating companies are being owed billions of naira, they haven't been paid, they don't have the resources. It's just too complicated, and government needs to deal with that. Once you address infrastructure, and you address policy environment, and you improve investors' confidence, SME will grow, everybody will grow, Nigeria will be better for it.
Finally, as we move to an election year, there's tension everywhere. People believe that there'll be a lot of spending. Mr. Taiwo, what do you think?
I think it won't be very different from other years where we had pre-election, and what normally happens is lower investor confidence, uncertainty in the environment. People who have money to spend will spend it. Maybe there will be less money to spend now because of the fight against corruption. But I think ultimately we need to use this opportunity to reform our political system so that we don't have budget delays for 6 months, so we don't have all these issues we're having in different places, and some governors having the wrong priority about projects that they execute. We must begin to focus on Nigeria and not just to think about what to say and tell people before the election, and then we wait for another 4 years. We just can't continue like that anymore.
We shouldn't be having electoral policies that will just last for an electoral cycle, and at the end of the day, we start new ones, policy somersaults and all of that. Mr. Taiwo Idele, head tax, PricewaterhouseCoopers, I must thank you very much for joining us today on Business
It's
Nigeria.
my pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Before we let you go, let's tell you that crude oil price trade mix at the global market this Tuesday as demand for the commodity stabilizes. While at the London market, the Brent crude steadies at $75 per barrel. The OPEC basket price drops to $74 per barrel. Well, before we go, let's remind you again that the Democracy Day special edition of Journalist Hangout begins today at 4:30 p.m. and ends at 6:30 p.m. 2 hours. Well, it promises to be an interesting package because it will be audience participatory and all the program panelists will be on ground to discuss issues shaping the polity as Nigeria marks this year's Democracy Day. Please stay with us on TVC News Nigeria. Well, that's our show for you today. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Tolu Ogunjobi. On behalf of the entire production crew, I say bye for now. Join us again tomorrow, God willing, for a fresh edition. Bye.